Welcome to the Knock Talk. I'm your host, William Hall, broadcasting live from Kingsland, Texas, USA, with another episode of Controversial Issues with Rabbi Chaim Coffman. How are you? I was going to say checkmate. Chaim Checkmate Coffman in the blue corner. Welcome back to a smoke crack. How you doing today, Rabbi?
Always a pleasure to be here. You know, I live for the introductions, not just the music, but it's, you know, it's always a lot of fun. I'm going to try and keep a straight face so I don't make either one of us laugh.
I got to see why my face looks so red. Oh, I think the color contrast got swapped out or something. I got to fix that real fast. That's annoying. Oh, my God. The saturation's at 140. Holy goodness. Oh, there we go. That's starting to say I know I do not have a sunburn. All right, well, good deal.
All right, if it makes you look younger, even better.
Hey, anything to make me look younger, right? That's for sure. So, hey, Raymond Reef, good to see you, brother, and others out there. So, our title today, Don't Go in the Ways of the Non-Jew, ? So you get to emphasize all you want on that. So does that mean a non-Jew?
I got 2 hours to emphasize on it. I'm great.
Does that mean the non-Jew shouldn't go in the way of the non-Jew either? Is that what you're saying?
So that's the question, right? That's going to be one of the questions.
Okay.
Right? How all this applies? Certainly, how it applies to a Jew for sure. Question is by a non-Jew, right? Is it going to apply to a non-Jew? There are multiple things to look into as well.
Cool. All right. Sounds good. We'll take it away. It's all yours.
Okay, always a pleasure to be here. So this is a wide-ranging question, which we're going to see exactly how far it goes. I don't know if I'll get through everything in one shot. Just it depends how quickly I talk, how much I get out, right? But there's multiple facets over here. So let's cut to the chase. In the book of Leviticus, chapter 18, verse 3. Torah tells us we shouldn't go, i.e. the Jewish people, and we'll speak about non-Jews, that the Jewish people should not go in the way of the non-Jews, right? Of the non-Jewish populace. According to the Rambam brings down, it's later codified in the Code of Jewish Law, in the Shulchan Aruch, that this prohibition, what does it include? Include the manners of dress, haircuts, building styles. It includes all kinds of things. Now, there are a number of things here that really we should be talking about. One aspect is idolatrous things, right? And those that don't make any sense, right? That what we would say, I guess in the vernacular, is they're nonsensical. If something is done, let's say for idolatry, for sure it shouldn't be done. Right? What happens if, let's say, later on, it's not really done for idolatry. It's done just, as a custom. This is what we do, even though that is how it started. Right? So we're going to see about that. Right? But, we're implying over here that even if they're not done for the sake of idolatry, right, i.e. with specific idolatrous intent, then still, according to this, it still should be forbidden, right? That's one side of the argument. Another side of the argument is that, let's say you have something that makes no sense, right? It's totally nonsensical. This is what the non-Jews do. So it's only going to be prohibited when it's entirely irrational, right? In other words, there's no rational reason whatsoever. There are no connotations, right? Certainly by idolatry, right? Nonetheless, if it's going to be, now it's going to be a caveat here, and the caveat is, let's say it leads to a gross breach of modesty, right? In other words, there are things that are going to be done that are, that are immodest, right? Certainly that are immodest that also, fit this category. On the other hand, a simple custom of the non-Jews that has no reference to idolatry, right? Let's say at no reference at all, even if there's a valid reason why it should be done, right? Let's say giving someone honor or something like that, then that certainly could be permitted. Why? Right? It's not necessarily irrational, but not only that, it had nothing to do with idolatry, right? If it had nothing to do with idolatry, and it's being used in the sense for honor somebody, right? So then we wouldn't have we wouldn't have an issue. We wouldn't have an issue with this. Also, let's say there's something that the non-Jews do. It's a custom, right? It's a custom what they do. It's secular, no connection to idolatry at all. So then it seems like it should be done, right? It's allowed, certainly allowed to be done. So it could be also that if there's a valid reason why it should be done, right? Nonetheless, it doesn't necessarily get classified as being problematic, as going in the ways of non-Jews, unless the origins are rooted in idolatrous practice, right? In other words, let's say something was done way back when as an idolatrous practice. Today, it's not idolatry, right? It's just a custom. It's a custom what people do, right? We're going to go into specific details in a second. But let's say it's a custom what people do. So some would say that's not a problem. Why? Because even though it started out as idolatry, today it's not, right? Today it's totally not. So if it's not, then we'd say, then one opinion would be okay. But some would say, even if it started off to be idolatrous, and today it's not, they would still say that, it shouldn't be done. Now, the question really, get down to nitty gritty, the question's going to be, even let's say it's permitted. Even if it's permitted, should I do it? Right? That's more, I would say, of a moral imperative, right? And that's what we're going to see by, we'll see by non-Jews, right? If that's going to apply, even if it's permitted, let's say for the sake of peace, family wants you to be there, nothing really forbidden about it. Should you be there, right? That would be the question. So we're gonna hit a bunch of different issues over here, and whatever. And then we'll see how it goes. So first thing we're gonna discuss is something, let's say, like medical apparel. I'm sure people have thought about this a lot. Probably lost a lot of sleep over it. Graduation gowns, other types of uniforms worn for a specific purpose, right? We can understand, now it's time people are, graduating either from high school, college, or whatever. So you wear these gowns, maybe these goofy gowns, whatever. The question is, am I allowed to, right? Is that going in the ways of the non-Jews? Then something that would be forbidden, right? So seemingly these things, medical apparel, graduation gowns, etc., shouldn't be a problem, right? Really shouldn't be considered like going to the ways of non-Jews, right? It should be, we'll say neutral like Switzerland, right? Maybe it should be all right, right? On the other hand, we have other issues. Let's say a person wants to wear ripped jeans, right? There are jeans that sell on the market. Anyone's not aware. They sell them on the market ripped. Not that you rip them yourselves, right? It's, I don't know, collector's item. People enjoy wearing jeans that are ripped or whatever. Or other types of fashions that either have no benefit, right? There's no reason for it, right? I mean, you can say, well, it's nice. People like to wear ripped jeans, but in general, there's no reason, right? There's really no reason for it, right? Nonetheless, it can be categorized as going in the ways of the non-Jews. Flashy fads that push the limit of modesty, that would definitely be an issue, right? Certainly because of modesty. Also, what about popular hairstyles? Well, I don't have that problem because I have no hair, right? But what about popular hairstyles? Can also be certainly a halachic issue. In all modes of dress, now this is going to have to clarify this, the rules of reasonable and useful fashion apply. Now, that's a loaded statement. Why? Because today, people would say, well, mini skirts, let's say, certainly for a woman, we're not going to talk about cross-dressing here, which would be forbidden anyway. But in general, that something like that, if there's going to be an issue, modesty issue, let's say, and it's a fad, it's a problem, right? For a modesty issue, for sure it's an issue, but certainly it can be a fad, right? And if it's a fad, it's not something we should do, right? We shouldn't go, this is the whole point of not going in the ways of the non-Jews. Now, why do I bring up this idea of reasonable and useful fashion? Because you can't go today, probably in most generations, well, today for sure, what a person is thinking. Why do I say that? Because when I got married many years ago, that we had the wedding in Israel, and then we had a wedding reception about 2 months later, in the States for, people couldn't be there. It was a black tie. My wife got dressed up in a wedding dress, whatever, we had a whole thing there. And we put on the invitation modest dressed, depreciated, or whatever the language is. You dress modestly. That was the point, right? So I had a relative, a woman, tell me, "Oh, that's great. This is going to be so much fun. I have this short little cocktail dress." Right? She didn't say mini skirt. It wasn't a mini skirt, but it was short. So according to her, in her own understanding, right, that is useful fashion. That's not a problem, right? That's going to be going according to what was required when we sent out the invitations. Modest, you should be dressed modestly. Now, this person didn't have any issue. She didn't think there was an issue with that, right? So here, the rules of reasonable and useful fashion, right, it has to be clarified. Can't be just whatever I think, right? It can't be just what the mores of the time are, because that's going to be a fad. That's going to be fashion. It's probably immodest, right, at the very least. So that's going to be an issue, right? But it's got to be reasonable, at least according to what the Torah says, right? So that's why I mention it over here. Now, another thing is that non-Jewish tradition, right, originally associated with idolatry. This is a major problem, right? This is something that has to be avoided. Why? Because it's originally associated with idolatry. Even if later it evolved into a non-religious custom. So we said before, seemingly there's a difference of opinion, right? Some are going to say, it doesn't matter how it started out. What is it now? What does it represent now? If it's just a custom, what people do, it doesn't really mean anything to anybody, even though it's based on idolatry. So what are we going to say? According to one opinion, we're going to be harsh. We're going to be extremely strict over here, going to be ultra fanatic, and we're going to say no. We're going to say you're not allowed to do it because of how it started. The fact it started with idolatry doesn't matter what it ends up as, right? Therefore, according to that, it should be forbidden. There are those rabbinical authorities that hold that non-Jewish mores, i.e. customs, with a benefit, right, with some sort of reason why they're doing it, or at some sort of benefit, that counts as going in the ways of the non-Jews. So there are extra stringencies as well. Where, some of these things are extremely, stringent, and that is going to be a negative command, right? A Jew who does this, right, is going to transgress, a negative command, because this is a guiding principle, of the rabbis, that the Jewish people remain distinct in our behavior, in our dress, from the nations around us. Right? I'll give one example. We're going to go through a number of questions here. Right? But I'll give one example. Way back when, the last couple hundred years, certainly in Europe, right? All men wore long coats, right? Like you see some of these, you see Hasidim, wear long jackets, not just regular suit jackets, that go down to their, to the knees, or even, a little bit further down or whatever, right? But everybody in Europe way back when, that's what they wore. That was the custom. What happens? So what happened was you had the Enlightenment, and dress changed, right? And now, so now the question would be, what about short coat, right? What about suits? We see everybody wearing suits today, right? You see ultra-Orthodox Jews wearing suits that are not Hasidic, whether Sephardic, whether Ashkenazic, doesn't matter, right? They're going to wear short suits that's going in the way of the non-Jews. That became the style, right? So even though that became the style, it wasn't forbidden, right? So that's why, that's why it's okay. But I'm just pointing out that's how everybody went, with the long coats, way back when. But the guiding principle, and this is, I know, see, this is why we're doing it for ratings, and people are going to get ticked off over here. The guiding principle of the rabbis are that the Jewish people are distinct, right? When God gave the Torah to the Jewish people, let's just keep in mind, right? He gave it on a small mountain, right? He didn't give it on the biggest mountain, not the, widest mountain, right? On Mount Sinai, right? One explanation of Sinai, the word Sinai, the root of the word is either Shin, Nun Yud, or Shin Nun Aleph. And what does the word Shin Nun Aleph mean? It means hatred. That when God gave the Jewish people the Torah, what happened? The rest of the world, rest of the nations hated the Jewish people. So that there's a major question. Question is, God, the Talmud says and the Medrash says, God went to all the nations. And he asked them if they want the Torah. They said, what's written in it? He said this. No, not interested. Went to another nation. You want the Torah? No. What's written in it? No, I'm not interested. Went to all the nations. All the nations rejected the Torah. Come along, the Jewish people, and the Jewish people say, Naseh v'nishma. They say, we will do, and then we will hear. Right? So now, where's all the hatred? Well, where's all the hatred come from? The non-Jews had a golden opportunity. They could have joined at the time of Abraham, time of the dispersion, the Tower of Babel. That the Ramchal and Derech Hashem in the way of God. The Ramchal says over there, they had an opportunity to join the Jewish people right then. Right? But God had mercy. Even on the way to Mount Sinai, God still said, okay, non-Jews want to join? That's great. Let them join. After the fact, after Mount Sinai, they have to go through this process called conversion. So now you're going to say, okay, the Jewish people are chosen. God chose us. We chose him, right? We've spoken about that before. So what are they arguing? What are they angry about? What are they angry about our status now? We just have more obligations, right? Many more obligations than non-Jews, right? But that's what brought about, one of the aspects anyway, brought about this hatred, right? But the whole point of what the Torah is, that the Ramchal says in the introduction to Path of the Just, what are we doing in the world? What is our purpose in the world? Our purpose is L'Aneg Hashem, to enjoy God's bountiful spirituality, whatever you want to call it. I don't even know what that means, in this world. We're supposed to keep the Torah. We're supposed to keep the mitzvahs. That draws us close to God. God gave us the book, passed it down to Moshe. Moshe passed it down to us. The book hasn't changed, right? It's one of the 13 principles of Maimonides. That the Torah hasn't changed. It's the same as when, way back when, etc. So, therefore, there are things that we do, that Jews do, that non-Jews aren't allowed to do, right? We have to stay strong to the Torah. Now, the anti-Semites, Jews and non-Jews, will say, okay, you're different. The more different we are than the non-Jews, the more they're going to hate us, right? What did Moshe Mendelssohn say? Moshe Mendelssohn said, be a Jew, and in your house, you can wear the longest coat you want. You want to keep Shabbos. You want to keep the festivals. It's great. You can do all that. When you go outside, look like everybody else. So comes along this prohibition in the book of Leviticus chapter 18. Tells us we have to be distinct in the way we dress, and we have to be distinct in our behavior. Right? When it comes to morality, we have to be at the top. We can't do things that, first of all, you get caught. It's definitely a desecration of God's name, because we are all lumped together. One Jew does something wrong, the entire nation gets nailed over here, right? So we have to be distinct, right? There are different things that make the Jewish people distinct from everybody else. One of them is circumcision, one of them is Shabbos, and one of them is wearing tefillin, right? All three of them are called signs. These signs differentiate the Jews from everybody else. Not only that, we have kashrus laws, we have holidays, different holidays, all these different things. So the whole point over here, just in general, is the fact that we should never, ever go in their ways, unless we have to, unless it's idolatry, right? Or the fact that we have to be distinct in what we do, right? And how we dress and, all these other things when it comes to moral laws, comes to behavior and all that. So we're going to hit a number of issues here. That I guess was by way of somewhat of introduction. First thing is, what about hair? See, I don't have this problem because I don't have any, right? But what about men having long hair, right? So many rabbinical authorities, they have what to say. They have what to say over here about men growing a fringe, i.e. long hair, let's say in the front, right? Or even, let's say a cuckoo, as we would say here in Israel. Right, in modern day Hebrew, they have a ponytail. Yeah, I remember, many moons ago when I was in high school, I had a kid in my class that had a rat tail. Right, he had a small ponytail. That was already a huge thing. Right, way back when, that was already, that was already a huge thing. I think you spoke about that by tattoos. Regardless, what's the problem? What's the problem with men having longer hair? They don't want to cut it. They don't necessarily want to cut it so short or maybe look like a cue ball or whatever. But what's the main problem? The main problem is what we call a chatzitza, a barrier. What's the barrier over here? That the long hair can be a barrier between the tefillin that you wear on your head. Right? In other words, the tefillin that you wear on your head has to go in the middle, has to go in the forehead. Now, what happens if you have a nice chunk of hair, which I don't, right? If you have a nice chunk of hair over here, right, you're going to have a problem, right? What's the problem? Tefillin has to go on your forehead, right? You have to, even if you have like stubble over here, that's okay, right? But if you have a number of hairs there, that's going to be a problem, right? So let's say someone decided they don't like being bald, whatever. So what they do, they put on a toupee, right? They put on what I'll call a Bob Dylan wig, right? They'll have this, short wig or whatever, this toupee to cover it up. So they're great. You don't have to worry about the bald spot. But what's the problem? Problem is, you want to put on tefillin, right? If you want to put on tefillin on your head, it's not going to apply to your armor, obviously. You're going to put it on your head and it's going on that hair. But the problem is it has to go on your forehead, right? That's the command. It has to be between your eyes, right? Between your eyes does not mean hair. It means here. Right, where the baby's soft spot is, right around here. So it has to go directly on the forehead. If it doesn't go on the forehead, there's a barrier in between, i.e. your toupee. That's a problem, right? That is going to be considered, a separation, certainly between the tefillin and a person's head, right? And that is certainly not going to be, that extra hair is going to be problematic. And therefore, you can't wear it, right? You wouldn't be allowed to wear tefillin in such a case. You'd have to cut that area of hair, or make it much shorter, much shorter, so you don't have that issue. So there's another issue. There are a few other issues with having long hair. One of them is having long hair is considered arrogant. It's considered being arrogant, being inappropriate. Today we could say, we could probably say that, isn't it a problem? Isn't it a problem because women have long hair? Right? Now there's a command in the Torah that a man is not allowed to wear women's clothing, and a woman is not allowed to wear man's clothing. Right? So that means you can't be a cross-dresser. Right? Any cross-dressers out there? If you're Jewish, stop. Right? That is a Torah prohibition. But there are other prohibitions the rabbis tell us, right? One of them would be plucking their eyebrows. That would be forbidden unless a person, let's say, is a unibrow, right? They have one eyebrow going all the way across. They don't like the way it looks. So they're allowed to cut it in the middle. They're allowed to trim it in the middle, right? Certainly if they want to get married and it looks bad, etc. But if they're self-conscious of it, they're allowed to trim it. But there are things you can't do, a man, just as a side point here, that there are things that a man can't do like a woman does. Now, if a man wants to look at himself in the mirror, just give a few examples. Wants to look in the mirror to make sure when he goes out, he does it in my language. He doesn't look like a schlep, right? His hair is somewhat groomed. He's tucked in. He looks good. That's it, right? When you look in the mirror, you're not supposed to spend that much time, at least for a guy, right? Because a woman's there, she'll spend, a good amount of time. She'll put on makeup. She'll make sure she looks good, and all that. So for a man, it's only permissible if he's looking in the mirror to make sure it doesn't look bad. He doesn't look disheveled. Why? Because that'd be a desecration of God's name. He goes out, he looks like a slob, right? Now, someone will say, I guarantee, someone's going to say, hey, I've seen these Orthodox Jews. They look unkempt. Maybe some of them smell, God forbid, or they're not tucked in. They look like slobs. How is that permissible? It's not. It's not permissible. If somebody, let's make it even more graphic. If somebody, let's say, is a rabbinic scholar, and they walk outside with a spot on their suit, on their shirt, right? They could be liable for a death penalty. Now you're going to say, come on, why is it so severe? Because they have a different stature, right? It'd be like a Kohen serving in the temple, and he's dressed like a slob, but he's the cream of the crop of the Jewish people. So how can you go out there dressed like a slob? If you tell me he's working and blood splattering all over the place, he's going to get dirty. Okay, it's one thing. If he's going amongst the populace, and he didn't change his clothes and all that, it's a problem, right? It's a serious problem. So one issue over here is that a person has long hair. We're not even, I just gave this as a side point. We're not even talking about the fact maybe that's what women do, and therefore it should be forbidden because of that, right? We're not even going to talk about that. We talked about it a little bit, but that's not the point here. Here it's considered arrogant. One explanation is you have long hair, you're showing off your hair, so to speak. It looks arrogant. It looks arrogant. That's one thing. The second thing is this is a Torah prohibition of going in the ways of non-Jews. You're dressing and acting in a manner the way non-Jews. And the third prohibition, as we mentioned as our side point, is it's a prohibition for a man to dress in the way of a woman. Now you'll tell me, aren't there women out there that buzz cuts? They have short haircuts. I mean, come on, didn't Sinead O'Connor shave her head, right? Way back when. I'll date myself here. So again, we're not going according to, people like that. We're going according to most women. Most women, all things being equal, they should have a nice amount of hair, right? So therefore, you want to have long hair. That's the way women do. Women have long hair. So why are you having long hair, right? It's not the way for men to have long hair. But then someone's going to say, hey, wait a minute. What about what goes on? What about goes on in the world, right? This is the norm, right? So to speak. This is what we see. You see a lot of men with long hair, but you also see a lot of men that don't have long hair. So again, what did we say before? And that's why I said this is crucial. The rules of reasonable and useful fashion. We can't go according to what everyone else is doing because we live in an absolutely messed up society. Right? I don't think there's any question what's going on in the world today is absolutely upside down, morality-wise. All this, put together, it's a disaster, right? So just because you have so many people doing it, you say, well, you got to go according to the majority, right? Exodus chapter 23, verse 2. You go according to the majority. So what do you have to say about that? That's only where you're going according to the majority for good, not for bad. That's one of the rabbis answered, I think one of the Roman generals. They said, you have to go like us. How come you're not going like us? Your Torah says you go after the majority. Yeah, when do we go after the majority? Right? When you have a rabbinical court, right? You have 3 judges, right? You go 2 against 1. You go against the majority. But here, the case is, let's say I had 3 pieces of meat. I know I have two kosher pieces of meat, and I have 1 non-kosher piece, right? So I'm allowed to eat it. The question is, can I eat them all together? Do I have to eat one after the other, right? That's the whole question because I know there's something non-kosher there, right? But what's the point? The point is I go after the majority. What I'm eating now is probably permitted. I got a 66% chance, right? Probably going to be permitted over here. So what did the rabbi answer? So the rabbi answered, when you go after the majority, you only go after the majority when you have a doubt. When there's a doubt. By us, we have no doubts. Right? By the Jewish people, we have no doubts. But again, that, if we would do that by what goes on in the, in the Western world, quote unquote, we'd be finished, right? There are many things we would do that be absolutely Torah prohibitions, right? It has to be reasonable, in fashion. That's not reasonable. Doesn't matter what the majority of people, do, right? This is exactly what people are going to say. Say, hey, majority of people are doing this. Majority of people are, I shouldn't say majority. There are a lot of people, a lot of men that are dressing like women, right? That are Jews. I don't know what the percentage is. Doesn't really matter, right? But you're going to say, let's say that, there are a lot of people doing that. So what? The Torah says I'm not allowed to. The Torah says you can't, that a man cannot dress in the way of a woman, and vice versa. So if the Torah tells me that, and the vast majority of people, forget about Jews, the vast majority of people, you got men dressing like women, villain because you have too much hair there, right? That's gonna be a Torah prohibition. So that's one issue, right? One issue about, let's say, men having long hair. Now there are a number of other questions. One is, what about celebrating birthdays? Is there an issue? I've gotten this question a number of times. Is there an issue celebrating birthdays? So there's a discussion whether this is a Jewish custom. Is this something we should do? Some rabbinical authorities hold that the concept of celebrating birthdays in the Torah, right, is only in regard to non-Jews. Right? When we talk about birthdays, what do we know? We know one specific case, or I probably know many. One I'm thinking of now is that what happened. Remember when Joseph was in the house of Potiphar. He was in Potiphar's house. His wife, tries to grab him. He ends up in jail, and the wine steward and the baker, right, both have dreams, and he interprets the dreams, and one gets killed, one goes back to his original position. Joseph says, "Don't forget me," and all that. But what happened? How did they get judged over here? They got judged because Pharaoh had a birthday, right? Pharaoh himself had a birthday, and he wanted to pardon some prisoners or see what's going on, right? He's in a jolly mood, right? But we see cases, we definitely see cases like that. But Talmud tells us there's a discussion. There's a discussion between the house of Hillel and the house of Shammai for 2.5 years. What's the discussion about? The discussion's about whether man should have been created or not. Right? Back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And they finally come to an agreement after 2.5 years. What's the agreement? They agree man never should have been created. Right? But the fact that man was created, so what do we have to do? So we have to look into our actions. Right? We have to be better people. And really, would have been a mistake. Not in God's eyes. God knew what he was doing. Right? The fact that he created man. And he knew that man could raise themselves to the highest spiritual level. But he also knew man could fail. And not only that, man could bring death to the world. He understood that. Right? So over here, the concept celebrating birthdays, you're going to say, what's the connection over here? Right? Is that it's better that man never should have been created? Right? Nonetheless, many rabbinical authorities recognize the importance of commemorating a birthday. Right? So therefore, among Jews, we can do it. Right? It would be permissible. Now, the fact that man never should have been created, right? That was the conclusion. Right? So I could say like this, a man never should have been created. Why in the world are you going to celebrate a birthday? Right? What's the whole point? Isn't celebrating a birthday every year? The older you get, the closer to the grave you're going to get. Right? I can see by my gray hairs, not that I'm so old yet, but we know every single day the clock is ticking. Right? So that's the question. If man never should have been created anyway, why celebrate birthdays? Right? So that's the question. The second thing is that wasn't mean it was better that man shouldn't have been created. Right? It would have been easier for a person not to have been created. But since it's preferable that we are created because we have a unique purpose in the world. Our unique purpose, God gave us a soul. He breathed in the spirit of life into every person, as the Torah says. So therefore, with the soul, we can do unbelievable things. I mean, we can do bad things also. Right? So therefore, The soul can come back and say, oh, no more soul. That's it. I don't need the soul. No, the soul goes out, you die. Right? So it's not like the soul's going to go in, you celebrate it again. Right? The fact is the soul's already there. So there are also a number of sources, right, that tell us that what does the birthday confer? A special power. Right? There's a special power on both Jews and non-Jews. In other words, someone who has the birthday, they can give out blessings. Right? They have a special heavenly influence on that day. Doesn't matter if they're an adult, doesn't matter if they're a child. Right? They could give blessings for all kinds of things, right? Because there's a special power, on that day. Not only that, it's a day of what we call a cheshbon nefesh. Cheshbon nefesh means you're taking a self-accounting, right, of your behavior over the past year. You tell me you should really take a self-accounting every day. But when you have a birthday and you realize you're another year older, hopefully another year wiser, right? We hope, right? Nonetheless, we're taking stock of what we did in the previous year. Was I better in this? Wasn't I better in this? But at the end of the day, the older a person gets, we mentioned, you're getting closer to the grave. You already have to start taking stock of your life, right? I mentioned Parsha video 2 weeks ago that we mentioned that the Levites stopped working in the temple at the age of 50, right? It says Moiva Rebbe Arav Agon Moshe should be well. He brings down over there. What's the point? Why they stop at the age of 50? Because at that age you should already be thinking about the next world, right? You should already be contemplating. I can't do the same things. I don't have the same desires. I can't eat as much. All these other things, right? We got to take stock, right? You got to take stock, of what's going to be, and we're going to have to answer, after 120 years, whenever that's going to be, right? So, on that day, on your birthday, it's a time to give praise and thanks, certainly to God, right, for being born. Because obviously, if you wouldn't have been born, right, so you wouldn't be here, so you wouldn't have this issue, right? But all agree, certainly in the birthday of a righteous person, that's a special day, right? That should be marked as a special day of celebration. Why? Not that you worship the person, that's forbidden. That 100% is idolatry. But you're thanking God for sending down such a special soul, right? So someone who's righteous has the birthday. That's a tremendous thing. Question is if they themselves really mark it or not, which really doesn't matter. The point is that we're thankful that they are here in this world in order to give guidance and spiritual guidance and all that. So that is the idea about birthdays. Now there's also about birthdays. We just throw this out there. Also, there was a question celebrating milestones, right? Let's say someone has a 75th birthday, a 60th birthday, a 50th birthday, right? The 50th is a big one, right? As well. So there's definitely an appeal. There's no question in round numbers. Round numbers associated with birthdays, certainly anniversaries, right? 10 years is a big thing, 20 years, etc. These are big things, and there's a big deal made out about celebrating, this milestone. Now, if we look in the sources itself, if we look in the Torah, certainly in the Talmud, not too much, right? Not too much support over here for such a thing. One of the commentaries says that celebrating a landmark birthday may actually be going in the ways of non-Jews, right? It may be actually a Torah prohibition. So a person thinks, I want to celebrate, 40th birthday, 30th birthday, 70th birthday, right? So you say, what's the big deal? I'm giving thanks. I'm still here, whatever, right? But that may actually be, according to this, a Torah prohibition. Nonetheless, we see many rabbinical authorities celebrated milestones publicly, such as a 60th birthday. Now, what's significant? Just throw this out there. What is significant about a 60th birthday? If a person, God forbid, did something that they were liable for being spiritually cut off, right? I.e., they ate on purpose. They ate any leavened product on Passover. They desecrated Shabbos in public on purpose, right? That you get killed in this world, spiritually cut off in the next. There are a number of things. Person you get spiritually cut off for. So spiritually cut off can mean that you die between the ages of 20 and 60. So at the age of 60, right, someone turns 60, and they're still here. That's the time to make a little bit of a celebration, right? What does that show? Not liable for a death penalty by being spiritually cut off, right? It's not a small thing. Definitely not a small thing. Also, 70th birthday, right? Certainly there's a custom that people make the blessing of Shechianu, right? They make the blessing of the Thanksgiving blessing, right? By 70, right? Now, why by 70? Because King David in Psalm says that the average lifespan of a person in general is 70 years. If he has strength, he gets 80 years. So you see, people don't make it. Some people die younger than that. So if a person reaches 70, you already reached what you should have reached, and now you're still alive, right? So there we can hear that you would make the blessing, the Thanksgiving blessing of Shechianu. Also, there are communities that mark the anniversary passing of a distinguished personality, right, of a great rabbi, right, in a special manner when it reaches the numbers, let's say 25, 50, 75 or something like that, right? Why would they do that? Because again, you have a special soul over here, and that's going to enhance fear of heaven among the people that are there, right? A person, let's say, passed away 20 years ago, 30 years ago, whatever. It's something, it's something that is marked, right? It's not saying, we love commemorating dead people, and, the dates of dead people. But why? Why? Because of what they represent, right? Because of the Torah that they represent, fear of heaven that we should have, thinking about what the person brought to the world, in spiritual terms, tremendous. Also, some say that what's the issue, right? Why would we say a person shouldn't do it? Either you tell me, you're going in the way of non-Jews, maybe it's a Torah prohibition, even though we see that many rabbinical authorities permit it. But what's another issue? You have this party, people get together, there's frivolousness going on, could have negative results, right? The person has to be careful, right? The only person has to be careful. Also if someone is, let's say a guest of honor, and they are an important person, right? A prestigious individual and a role model, right? And, you can honor them as well, right? Certainly you can commemorate their death as well because of all the great things they did to help, righteous people, to help the Jewish community, etc. Another common thing that comes up is, what about using a secular calendar? Now, this is more problematic, right? There are a number of issues over here. First of all, some months of the year in the secular calendar, right? One of the months are idolatrous, right? In other words, the names of the months are idolatrous. So therefore, it would be a halachic issue to mention the idol by name, right? In other words, especially if it's something respectful. So what do we hold? We hold, when it comes to idolatry, we make fun of it, right? We make fun of it as much as possible. Mitzvah to make fun of it. Why? Because it has no power. We have to show that it has no power, right? But over here, what are we doing? So a person mentions the name and they do it in a respectful manner. It's a problem, right? Because it comes from idolatry, right? There's no way, shape, or form, we as Jews, no question about it, that we should have any respect for idolatry. It's not about live and let live, right? It's not about being so open-minded till our brains fall on the floor, right? There are many, many severe prohibitions that the Torah says idolatry is forbidden across the board, right? Can't have it in your house, can't bow down to it, can't make, graven images. It says it many, many times, right? So therefore, why in the world are we going to show it respect, right? That's one thing. Another thing is, many times people will say a certain date, and they'll say the common era, right? Now the idea of the common era, right? What are they doing? Right? What are they doing over here? They're going according to their calendar. But we have a mitzvah to calculate the months in accordance to what calendar? Our calendar. They go according to the solar calendar. We go according to the lunar calendar. Right? And the Torah tells me in the book of Exodus chapter 12, really the Rashi says that's where the Torah should have started. The first mitzvah of the Torah is Rosh Chodesh, is the new month, etc. So the issue is that what's the first month in the Jewish calendar? The first month is the month of Nisan, right? That is called the head of all months. So if we would count according to the secular calendar, you're gonna say, what's the first day of the year? We all know, right? 1st of January. We know that, right? But the problem is, what's the first of the year? The first of the year is Nisan, right? The month of Nisan, right? According to many rabbinical authorities, right? That may be a violation here, right? By saying that January is the first, is the first of the year, right? We know that's not true. You say, okay, so I go, so we mentioned the second calendar, the secular calendar. There are other issues, right? There are also other issues, right? And the reason is that the days of the week as well are known as forms of idolatry, right? So what do? We count the days of the week, right? We'll say, we count them in conjunction with Shabbos, right? With the connection to Shabbos. We say Yom Rishon LeShabbos, right? The first day until Shabbos, we'll say Yom Sheni, Yom Shlishi, etc. And we see that certainly in Yiddish, they've certainly done that. But here, many rabbinical authorities may be lenient. Why? Because, we already linked that day to Shabbos when we say, the song of the day, when we say it in the morning, right? We say this is the first day to Shabbos, second day to Shabbos, third day to Shabbos. So since we already say it during the day, so really, I really wouldn't have to say that. I really wouldn't have to say that today. But, the idea is, first of all, they're based on idolatry. So why am I mentioning idolatrous names? Not only that, if we mention certain things like, this is the date, it's the 1st of January, that's not true, right? It's certainly not true. Why is it not true? Because we don't go according to the secular calendar. All the Jewish holidays go according to the Jewish calendar. The secular dates can come out different times. Sukkot, we understand, has to be in the fall. Passover, Torah tells me, has to be in spring, right? The difference between a lunar calendar and the secular calendar, in a calendar, i.e. 365 days, whatever, right? There's an 11-day difference between a lunar calendar and a regular calendar. So that means we have to compensate for that. So every 19 years, about 7 times within 19 years, we have to have a leap year, right? Just like we're going to have a leap year this coming year, because otherwise, there's an 11-day difference. At some point, you're going to have Sukkot's going to fall out in the winter. You'll have Passover fall out in the summer. Well, that can't be. That absolutely can't be, right? By the Muslims, we'll make a little bit of a distinction here, a big distinction. The Muslims also go by a lunar calendar. But by them, what's the issue? Ramadan, right? Ramadan can fall in the fall, spring, winter, or summer, right? They don't make any compensation. For us, compensation is crucial. Because if you don't have compensation, the holidays are not the right time, right? But not only that, the holidays, the Torah tells me exactly when they are, right? It's the 10th day of the 7th month. It's the first day, it's the 15th day of the first month, or whatever it is. We have specific times when the holidays are, right? Passover is always the 15th of Nisan, right? It's the first month, 15th of Nisan, right? Sukkot is on the 14th of Tishrei, right? We have Yom Kippur. Yom Kippur is on the 10th of Tishrei. Rosh Hashanah is the 1st of Tishrei, right? We have dates. We have clear-cut dates, and nobody in the right mind, as Jews, no matter how secular they are, they're going to celebrate however they celebrate it. They're going to celebrate the holidays on the Hebrew day, regardless of what the English day is, right? That doesn't matter. They're going to go according to the Hebrew day because that's what we do, right? Now, when it comes to commemoration, we spoke about this before. When it comes to commemoration of someone that died, someone let's say we'll make it easy. Someone we're obligated to mourn for, right? A Jew's obligated to mourn for. A mother, father, sister, brother, God forbid a child, or a spouse. Now, the day they died, you're going to commemorate that day every year. That's going to be a Hebrew day, right? It's going to come out on an English day also. But essentially, all the holidays and everything else goes according to a Hebrew calendar. We don't go according to a secular calendar, right? So when you're going to commemorate the day that the person died, you're going to do it on the Hebrew date. So I've heard, some people say, well, this person died on this day, whatever the secular, whatever the non-Jewish calendar says, that's when we're going to observe it. Now, again, the calendar changes. The Jewish calendar can be off by a number of days, right? Between the Hebrew calendar and the secular calendar. Now, if that is the case, and you say, well, I'm going to celebrate the same English date, but that doesn't make any logical sense. Why? By the Hebrew holidays, by the Jewish holidays, they go by a Jewish date. Right? You're going to say, well, 20 years ago, Rosh Hashanah fell on September 12th. Makes more sense for me to celebrate it then, so that's what I'm going to do. That doesn't make any sense. Nobody does that. Nobody does that. Right? Someone will say, no, you know what? This is the day I celebrate it. This is the day I'm going to commemorate this person's death. But it's the wrong day. Right? You don't go according to the secular calendar for anything when it comes to Judaism. Right? Say, no, don't, I'm Reform. I'm conservative. No, you're stupid. You're stupid because it's the wrong day. If you want to commemorate it, okay, a lot of these things are customs, probably not the end of the world anyway, right? But if you're going to commemorate it, I always say, if you're going to do it right. If you're not going to do it, then don't bother. So, at least up until this point, there's a whole, the whole other thing here, which I'm not really going to get to. Actually, maybe I'll speak about one thing. One thing that is actually pretty relevant. And that is, what about the holy day of Thanksgiving? Thanksgiving's all about turkey and football. Not necessarily in that order. Now, the question is, was Thanksgiving ever a religious holiday? Right? So, if you go way back when it was first done, historically, only the Continental Congress proclaims that there's a reference to a Christian deity. Way back when, right, that was done, according to the Continental Congress. But, as most people would probably say, there's no religious service. We don't have any religious service, when it comes to Thanksgiving. So here, what do Americans, when they celebrate it, right, what do they celebrate it with? Food. Right? Probably alcohol, probably, and they're watching football also. So therefore, if that's what they're doing, it's a secular holiday, totally secular holiday. Now, there are a number of issues, right? There are a number of things here. One of the Torah giants, the last generation, according to everybody, Moshe Feinstein, of blessed memory, has 4 different responses on this topic. Now, in the earlier responses, what does he say? He's against it. He's against celebrating it. Could be, in his day, that it was more religious connotation, right? We're talking about the early 1960s, right? So, 20 years later, probably not the case, right? But it could be in the 60s, it's more religious connotation. But in his later response, he allows Thanksgiving observance, and he holds clear it's not a religious celebration. Totally not a religious celebration. And really, you can eat turkey, right? As long as it's not an obligatory annual celebration, right? Then you'll be allowed to eat turkey because it's a non-issue. It's really a non-issue, right? It's really a periodical, it's whatever. You want to have a meal, you have a meal. More fancy, less fancy. Whatever you serve, you serve. But it's not like, it's written in stone. that you have to have turkey. You don't have turkey, forget about football. You don't have turkey, no cranberry sauce, it ain't Thanksgiving, right? Forget it. You all transgressed for the last however many years trying to celebrate Thanksgiving. It's over, right? All the same, Moshe Feinstein concludes it's still preferable not to have a celebration on Thanksgiving, right? Why? Because one of his responses, someone asked, my son's going to be bar mitzvah, right? He's going to be 13 a day. What does the day come out on Thanksgiving? So Moshe Feinstein said, don't celebrate it on that day. Celebrate on another day, right? But you shouldn't. That's the whole point. You should not make a celebration specifically on that day. Now, there are other contemporary rabbinical authorities who said eating turkey certainly wasn't an issue, right? Certainly wasn't an issue. Why? Because Thanksgiving's the only day of thanks, right? It's not an idol celebration over here. Therefore, eating turkey is not going in the ways, of the non-Jews. On the other hand, there are rabbinical authorities that they claimed that Thanksgiving is an annual holiday based on the Christian calendar, and certainly associated at least a little bit with idolatry, right? And therefore, 100% should be forbidden. And therefore, they would hold that, you're not allowed to. Avigdor Miller, of blessed memory, he was very, very strong on the view that its origin was a religious holiday. Now, not everyone agrees with that. But again, the question was, even if it is, we said at the beginning, even if that is the case, right, that it was and it's not now, so there are different opinions whether I'd be allowed to celebrate it or not. And others say that it was only a holiday established by the pilgrims, right, rejoicing on their own survival, right? They didn't starve, so they made this whole feast, etc. So that wouldn't be considered going in the ways of the non-Jews as well. But there's an issue that if an idolater makes a personal holiday for various reasons, birthday, gets out of jail or whatever, and he thanks his gods for that, that's prohibited, right? Then you wouldn't be allowed to. So that would apply, according to this, would apply to Thanksgiving, right? Because they're commemorating their thankfulness, and their survival, and therefore it should be prohibited. So whatever, there are different opinions over here, certainly, about celebrating, but there's another issue, right? There's another issue. The other issue is a moral issue. What's the moral issue? We all know the pilgrims were thankful, when they came and they made the Thanksgiving dinner, and who they make it with of all people? The Indians. They made it with the Indians, right? And then what did they do? Then they butchered them. They butchered them years later, destroyed them, right? So now if you understand the history and what went on, right? Now, I happen to be a student of history, for better or for worse. So if you understand the history, what was behind what they did, so okay. So if you want to tell me the pilgrims did it, they thanked their gods, it's idolatry, you can't do it, okay. Right? Others are going to be more lenient because it wasn't that. Fine. What about the issue with the Indians? And that they demolished all these Indians, and they killed them. So how are people celebrating, eating turkey and watching football? Because it doesn't matter. Because they don't think about that aspect of it. But it's a moral issue, right? So now with a minute and a half that you're going to give me, these things, I didn't get to other things, which whatever we'll have to do, have to do next week about, let's say, non-Jewish music, and sports and whatever, right? The question is, okay, if these are idolatrous things, and that's how they started, right? So certainly a non-Jew can't do it either, right? That would be forbidden. That would be forbidden to him. But the question is, okay, now we started, what about long hair? Can a non-Jew, does this apply going in the ways of non-Jews? Non-Jew doesn't have this issue, right? He really doesn't have this issue. The real question is, should he be doing it in the first place? Right? If it doesn't apply going in the ways of the non-Jews, there's a moral aspect over here. Should he be walking around even as a Noahide, right? Should he be a guy walking around with long hair wearing earrings, right? They're allowed to wear earrings, right? Again, a man can't do what a woman does, right? So that should also apply to a non-Jew. So, okay. So would the same thing apply by wearing here again? here, we're going to say, as we mentioned, the rules of reasonable and useful fashion, right? If it's definitely an issue about wearing women's clothing, well, I would think non-Jews shouldn't do that either. Why? Because that makes rational sense. Forget about what's going on today. The morality today has changed well beyond, well beyond. So even if you tell me it's normal today, and this is the norm, for us it's not. It's what makes sense according to the Torah, right? The cross-dressing for a non-Jew, 100% should be forbidden. Wearing long hair for a guy, right? Wearing earrings should also be forbidden. Why? Because you're going in the ways of the non-Jews. But what about by Thanksgiving, right? Thanksgiving shouldn't be an issue. What about Mother's and Father's Day? I didn't even get to that, but I don't need to because they're only a day for Hallmark, right? I always tell people Mother and Father's Day, we celebrate every day. Right? Was that ever a religious holiday? Never. Right? As far as I know, it was never a religious holiday. If it was never a religious holiday, right, then, if it's an annual thing like this, yeah, then it's going in the ways of the non-Jews. Right? And again, the person wants, you're going to have that Sunday off anyway. The person's not working. You want to go out. You want to do things, whatever. But to celebrate it like people would, in that sense, should be forbidden. Right? Because again, why are you doing that? Why in the world, you have the special day for mom and dad, whatever it is. You get Mother's Day in May, you get Father's Day in June, right, coming up in a few weeks. So you're going to say, so what's the big deal? So I want to honor my father. He deserves to be honored. Okay, right? But why do you have to have a special day? This is, so America says this is what you got to do, right? This is the day. This is the day you're going to honor dad. So what about every other day? I can treat him like dirt. I can throw things at him. I can make fun of him. I can say things against him. I can do all these things. That doesn't make any sense, right? Now, if it's the only time a non-Jew could get together with family, then I don't think it's the end of the world, right? Even possibly by Thanksgiving, right? It may not be the end of the world, but you have to ask the question. You have to ask the question. Am I a better person for doing this? Do I have extra motivation for doing this? I could have a number of reasons for doing it, right? In other words, getting together with family, and that's important, as long as you don't kill each other, right? So if you get together with family, that's the only day to do it. You're not going to kill each other. It's probably not the end of the world for them, right? But, if it's something that started out as idolatrous, and it's idolatrous, then yeah, then for sure you can't do it, right? But, maybe there is a moral issue. Maybe the moral issue is I shouldn't be doing that because I don't have anything to do with this. I want to live my life according to the way God wants. Forget about Hallmark, forget about football, forget about cranberry sauce, forget about all this stuff. I want to be close to God, and that's not the way to do it. What, I'm only going to celebrate one day a year, to honor a parent? That makes no sense, right? The Torah, one of the 10 Commandments is honoring parents, right? Fearing your parents, right? It's in there. Right? So it's in there for a reason. It's going to apply to non-Jews also. Not exactly the same. They don't have to stand up when their parent walks in the door, but you have to have respect. You can't make fun of them. Seemingly even if they're evil. A lot of different, there are a lot of differences, right? But you don't do that one day a year. Every other day of the year, I can just smack them upside the head and have fun with them, right? That doesn't make any sense, right? So yeah, so to get together with family, I would say it's not the end of the world. If you're not going to get together anyway, don't bother. Why? Because it's not doing something where it's beneficial over here. There's no benefit, right? Not only that, maybe it's going to be forbidden also because we said it's nonsensical, right? That's what we said before. It's one of the criteria. If it doesn't make sense, which this doesn't, right? It certainly doesn't make sense to have one day a year for a mother or father. It doesn't make any sense at all. You got to take them out. You got to honor them. What an unbelievable thing. Got to cook them breakfast, go out fancy dinner. That's beautiful. So what? What about every other day of the year? That doesn't make any sense, right? If it doesn't make any sense, that's a total prohibition of going in the ways of the non-Jews. The non-Jews shouldn't do it either.
There you go. You said, listen, you're not going to kill each other. Well, you don't know too many people in my family.
You don't know so many people in my family either.
Goodness, right. That's
all I have to do, go to a family function and start talking about God. They're going to pick me up and throw me outside. It's like, wait, I'm not done yet. You're done now. You're done now.
That's
but there are other things, whatever. I guess we'll have to get to
Yep.
I have to get to next week about about listening to non-Jewish music, and then sports is the whole topic in of itself, etc. But a non-Jew has to always ask the question as well. A Jew says, whatever I do, does this make me a better Jew? Does this draw me closer to God? And if you have a doubt about turkey and football, does this make me a better person? Okay, there are other factors going on. But if those other factors don't exist, my kids had school on Thanksgiving when I lived in the States. People said that was sacrilege. I said, we don't celebrate it. It had nothing to do with us. We're thankful we're here, and, America's a great place and all that, but, within Judaism, we don't celebrate it.
Right.
Right? There are, in the modern Orthodox community, I should have mentioned, there are modern Orthodox Jews that do celebrate it, and they are thankful, and they do other things. Okay. But, even if it's a secular thing and you want to be thankful, fine. Does this make me a better Jew or not, or a better non-Jew? And if you have a doubt, then most likely you shouldn't do it.
Right. That's cool. Well, that sounds good, Rabbi. Pardon me, I'm going to cough in the phone. So, Rabbi, thank you. We'll see you next week. Same time, same place as Shulman. And we'll all see you on the other side. Guys, subscribe to the YouTube channel, turn on notifications. It'll do us well. Thanks, man. Peace out, everybody. Later.